She cheated on me, and when I asked her why, I expected tears, regret, maybe even silence. What I didn't expect was for her to look me in the eyes and say, "Because you're not good in bed." The words landed like a sledgehammer. My heart raced as I stood frozen, staring at the woman I had loved for over a decade. Olivia sat across from me at the dining table, her face calm, her tone almost indifferent. It was as though she had just stated a fact, something trivial like the weather. "You're kidding, right?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She sighed, as if she were exhausted by the effort of explaining. "I'm not saying it to hurt you, Jake. But it's the truth. I've been unsatisfied for years." Unsatisfied. Years. I felt my chest tighten. "And your solution was to screw someone else?" My voice cracked, anger rising. "You couldn't talk to me about it. You couldn't give me a chance to fix things." Her expression hardened. "I tried, Jake. You just didn't listen. Every time I brought up intimacy or tried to spice things up, you brushed it off. What was I supposed to do? Pretend everything was fine forever?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wife, my partner, was sitting here blaming me, and the weight of her words hit me like a freight train. It wasn't just the affair that tore at my insides, but her cold, indifferent honesty. She wasn't even apologizing for what she had done. It was as if she had been waiting for me to ask the right question, to give her the excuse to say it all out loud. I clenched my fists, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, none of them good. I had never seen her like this, so detached, so unmoved by the pain she had caused. My heart ached at the realization that maybe, in her eyes, we had already been over for a long time. "I gave you everything, Olivia," I whispered, barely able to get the words out. "And you just—" I couldn't finish the sentence. What could I even say at this point? Her face softened for a moment, but it was brief. "Jake, I didn't want to hurt you, but I needed more, and I wasn't getting it from you. I wanted to shout, to demand more answers, to make her feel the same crushing weight of betrayal that I was drowning in. But I was too tired, too heartbroken, to argue any longer. I turned away, needing space, needing to escape the suffocating air in the room. "So that's it?" I muttered. "You're done with us?" Olivia didn't respond immediately. I glanced back to see her staring down at the table, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her coffee cup. When she spoke again, her voice was low, almost regretful. "I think I am." Before everything fell apart, Olivia and I had what I thought was a perfect marriage. We met in college. Me, the shy guy who barely spoke to anyone, and her, the outgoing, confident woman who seemed to know everyone. She had this way about her, a spark that made her impossible to ignore, and I was drawn to her instantly. She was everything I wasn't, and it felt like fate when we first crossed paths. Our early years were filled with excitement, adventure, and love. We shared everything. Dreams for the future, laughter over dinner, and late-night conversations that lasted until the early hours. I used to think that nothing could tear us apart. We were a team, a couple that balanced each other out. I supported her career ambitions, and she kept me grounded, pushing me to be better. For a while, it felt like we had the perfect balance. The intimacy was electric, and we made time for each other, no matter how busy life got. Our weekends were spent exploring new places, trying new things, and rediscovering little sparks that kept our bond fresh. But slowly, over time, something started to shift. I didn't notice it at first. It was subtle. At first, I chalked it up to work stress or a phase we were going through. Olivia started staying later at the office, often telling me she was too tired to go out or do anything. The spark I had once felt between us seemed to dim. I tried to brush it off. After all, life had changed. We were getting older, responsibilities were piling up, and things weren't as easy as they used to be, but deep down, I could feel it. Something was off. Olivia wasn't the same. There were fewer kisses, fewer late-night talks. When we did have sex, it felt mechanical, like a routine, and she seemed so distant. I remember one night, I reached for her, hoping to rekindle some kind of intimacy, but she pulled away. "I'm tired, Jake," she had said, her voice distant, already turning her back to me. I wanted to be understanding, to not push, but I couldn't help feeling rejected. She was always tired, always too busy. Yet she never seemed too tired for work, for friends, or for anything else. Then there was the night I walked into our bedroom, only to find her staring at her phone with a smile on her face, a smile that wasn't for me. She quickly hid the phone when she saw me, but I saw enough. It wasn't anything. But what I didn't realize was that we had both been drifting apart in our own silent ways. She had already checked out, emotionally. I just didn't see it until it was too late. And now, here I was, standing across from the woman I thought I knew, hearing the words I never thought would come out of her mouth. It all hit me like a ton of bricks when I stumbled upon her phone one afternoon. Olivia had left it unattended, the screen glowing, notifications flashing with a stream of messages. It was a dumb mistake. She'd always been careful with her phone, but that day, she let her guard down. I don't know what made me pick it up. Maybe it was the nagging feeling that had been eating at me for months, or maybe I was just looking for something, anything, that would explain why I felt so disconnected from her. When I unlocked the phone, the last message thread that popped up made my stomach drop. It wasn't the usual friendly banter she had with her colleagues. It was a conversation between her and a man I didn't recognize. The tone of the messages was flirtatious, suggestive, and filled with inside jokes that I had never heard her mention. One message stood out more than the others, and when I read it, I felt my heart stop. "Can't wait to see you again tonight. I miss you." I didn't need to see any more. The tears welled up instantly, and my hands started shaking. I had known something was off for months, but this was confirmation. My wife, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was having an affair. I couldn't just stand there. I needed to confront her, needed to hear her admit it. My mind was racing. As I walked to the living room, phone still clutched in my hand. When Olivia walked in, she saw me holding it, and her face immediately shifted. "Jake, what are you doing with my phone?" Her voice had an edge to it, but I could see the fear in her eyes. She knew. She knew. I knew. "Who is he, Olivia?" I asked, my voice rough, raw with anger and betrayal. "Who is this guy you've been seeing behind my back?" She froze, the color draining from her face. I could see the moment the truth hit her, and she slowly sank into the couch, her hands trembling. She didn't speak right away. There was a long, painful silence between us, and then she whispered, barely audible, "I'm sorry." I couldn't process her words. "Sorry? You're sorry?" I couldn't believe it. "You've been lying to me, sneaking around behind my back, and now you're sorry." The rage was bubbling up inside me, each word feeling like a knife to my chest. She looked down at the floor, avoiding my gaze, unable to meet my eyes. "I never meant for it to happen. It just did, and I didn't know how to stop it." I felt the betrayal sear through me, but it wasn't until she spoke the words that came next that everything shattered. "Jake, the truth is, you're just not good in bed." The words hit me harder than anything else she could have said. It felt like the ground beneath me gave way. I couldn't breathe. My mind went blank. "What?" I choked out, barely able to understand what I was hearing. "You heard me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I haven't been satisfied for a long time. And when I met him, he gave me everything I've been missing. I didn't know what else to do." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, but instead I stood there, paralyzed by her confession. How could she say that to me? I had always tried to please her, always made an effort to make her feel loved and wanted. To hear her say, I wasn't good enough in the most intimate part of our relationship, it cut deeper than I could ever explain. How could you say that to me? I finally managed to get out. You're telling me I'm not good in bed. That's why you cheated on me. That's your excuse. She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. I know it sounds cruel, but it's the truth. I wanted more, and when I found it, I couldn't just turn my back on it. I thought I could still make it work with you, but I couldn't. I wasn't happy. Her words stung, but there was something else underneath them. An honesty I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. Still, the sting of betrayal overwhelmed everything. How could she? How could she throw away everything we had over something so shallow? I wanted to walk away right then, but I couldn't. I needed answers. I needed to understand how we got here. So, all these years, all the times I tried to make things work, to make you happy, it wasn't enough. Olivia didn't answer right away. She just stared at me, her eyes full of guilt and pain. I'm so sorry, Jake. I never meant to hurt you, but I did. And I can't take that back. It was too late for apologies. The damage was done. My marriage, everything I thought was solid, was in ruins. And as much as I wanted to fight for it, a part of me knew that this was something I couldn't fix. After Olivia's confession, a numbness set in. I couldn't bring myself to look at her anymore. The words she had said about my inadequacies replayed in my head like a broken record, each time slicing a little deeper into my pride. I found myself questioning everything. Was I really that bad? Had I failed her in every possible way? Had she been this unhappy all along, and I never even saw it? I spent the following days in a fog of anger and confusion. I'd never been the type to wallow in self-pity, but the more I thought about it, the more I started to believe that perhaps it was my fault. The guilt gnawed at me. Maybe if I'd tried harder, maybe if I'd been more attentive, more spontaneous, maybe she wouldn't have strayed. But the truth was I couldn't know. All I had were her harsh words. A few cruel sentences that had destroyed the foundation of everything I thought I knew about our marriage. I kept replaying her line in my head, wondering if there was some truth to it. Had I been complacent in the bedroom? Had I failed to meet her needs? My mind spiraled as I thought about every intimate moment we'd shared, questioning every kiss, every touch. I had never thought we had problems there, but then again, I never saw her growing distance, her growing dissatisfaction. She never communicated any of this to me. She never gave me a chance. The bitterness began to take root in my chest. I wasn't just angry at Olivia anymore. I was angry at myself for being so blind, for not seeing the cracks that had been forming. I started to resent her for doing this to me, for betraying me in the worst way possible, and for justifying it with something so petty. I knew I couldn't stay in this house, not with the constant reminder of what had happened. So I moved into a friend's apartment, just to get some space, some air. But even away from Olivia, I couldn't escape the thoughts. I felt like I had lost myself. Who was I now after all of this? I called up my best friend David one night needing someone to talk to. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe advice, or just someone to listen. David, I don't know what to do, I said, my voice cracking. She told me I wasn't good enough. I don't know if I can ever look at myself the same way again. David's voice came through steady and calm on the other end. Jake, I know you're hurting right now, but you can't let this define you. She was the one who messed up, not you. Yeah, the marriage had problems, but this is on her. But what if it wasn't? What if I really wasn't good enough? I tried, man. I really did. I thought I was doing everything right, I confessed. But maybe I didn't. Maybe I failed her. No, David interrupted. You can't go down that road. No one's perfect, Jake. What she did, cheating, has nothing to do with how you are in bed or how much effort you put in. That's just an excuse she's using to justify her actions. I let his words sink in, but I couldn't fully accept them. My self-worth felt shattered. like a million little pieces I couldn't put back together. I spent the next few days reflecting on what David said, but the doubt still lingered. Olivia's words haunted me, and I found myself wondering, was she right? Was I truly the cause of everything that went wrong? Or was this just her way of avoiding responsibility for her own actions? And then, one night, after lying awake in my friend's apartment, I realized something. I wasn't just angry at Olivia, I was angry at myself for allowing her to manipulate me into believing that I was the problem. Her affair had been about her own dissatisfaction with herself, not me. She had made a choice to cheat regardless of how she felt about our intimacy, and deep down, I knew that wasn't something I could fix. I didn't want to stay in a relationship where I was blamed for everything that went wrong. And that's when I made the decision. I had to let go. The decision to leave wasn't easy, but the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Olivia and I had been living in two separate worlds for too long, and no amount of talking, no matter how hard we tried, could fix that. The next time I saw her, I was calm. Almost too calm. She was sitting at the kitchen table, fiddling with a coffee mug, her eyes scanning the floor. She knew this conversation was coming. And yet, I didn't know how to begin. How do you confront the person who's supposed to love you when all they've done is betray you? Olivia, I've been thinking, I began slowly, about everything you said, about what you did, and I can't keep going like this. I can't keep pretending that things are okay when you've already checked out. She looked up, her face a mixture of sadness and resignation. Jake, I never meant to hurt you. I really didn't. Her words felt hollow, but I didn't interrupt. I needed her to explain herself, even if it didn't make sense to me anymore. I know we've had problems, she continued, avoiding my gaze. But I didn't know how to fix them, and I didn't feel desired by you anymore. It wasn't just about the sex, it was about feeling ignored. I needed more than what we had. That's why I started seeing someone else. A pit formed in my stomach. It wasn't the first time I'd heard her mention feeling neglected, but hearing it now, after everything, made me feel as though I'd been blind for so long. So you cheated on me, I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue, because I wasn't good enough in bed. I made air quotes, mocking the phrase she had used, not because I thought it was funny, but because I needed to make sense of the absurdity of it. I know it sounds shallow, but it wasn't just that. I felt disconnected. I thought that maybe if I had that excitement again, that spark with someone else, it would fill the void. Her voice trembled slightly. But it didn't. It never does. I was angry, hurt, and still, part of me felt that familiar pull to comfort her. But I couldn't. Not anymore. Olivia, you've spent months, maybe years, dissatisfied. And instead of talking to me, instead of trusting me to work through it with you, you went out and destroyed everything, I said, trying to control the frustration in my voice. If you weren't happy, why didn't you come to me sooner? Why didn't you give me a chance to try? I didn't know how to, she whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't know what to say or how to fix it. I didn't even know if I wanted to try anymore. That's when I met him. I sat back, staring at her. The pain was unbearable, and yet I couldn't let it consume me. I understand you were unhappy, I said slowly, feeling the weight of each word. But that doesn't justify what you did. I loved you. I still love you. But I can't keep blaming myself for your mistakes. You made a choice, Olivia. You chose him over me. And I can't let myself keep wondering if there was something I could have done differently. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I almost regretted what I said. But then I remembered her words, the ones that had cut me so deeply, the ones she had so carelessly used to justify her betrayal. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I never wanted to lose you. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't respond right away. My heart ached for the woman I once knew, but I also realized I had to let her go. Maybe, just maybe, this was the end of what had once been a beautiful marriage, but that didn't mean I had to keep letting her hurt me. I don't know where we go from here, Olivia, I said, standing up. I need space. I need to figure out what I want. And I don't think I can keep living in a marriage that feels like this. She looked up at me, her eyes searching mine, for something, hope, maybe. But I didn't have any left to give. Jake, please, she whispered. But I couldn't stay. Not for her. Not for us. I'm sorry, Olivia, but this is over. Update. Hey everyone, thank you for all your support and insightful comments. It's been a rough road, and reading your words really gave me strength to push through. Since my last post, things have only gotten more complicated, but I think I've finally come to a decision. I owe you all an update, so here's where I'm at now. As I said before, I confronted Olivia, and honestly, I didn't know what to expect. What I got was more painful than I could have imagined. I thought we could have a real conversation, but instead it felt like I was hearing her excuses. Over and over. She told me how she'd been feeling ignored and unloved, how she didn't feel desired by me anymore, and how that lack of connection led her to cheat. It was like being hit with a wave of guilt and confusion. I always thought we were in this together, that we were fighting for the same thing. But when I asked her, if you were unhappy, why didn't you talk to me? All she could say was, I didn't know how to. That stung. Badly. She spent months, maybe even years, feeling neglected, and instead of telling me, she decided to get validation somewhere else. I loved her so deeply, and all I wanted was to fix things, but it felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me. How could she not see how much I cared? How could she throw it all away? I told her, very calmly, that I couldn't keep blaming myself for her choices. It wasn't me who cheated. It wasn't me who betrayed our vows. She made a decision. She chose him over me, and I couldn't keep living in a marriage where trust had been shattered beyond repair. Her tears didn't change anything. I realized, painfully, that no amount of tears could undo the damage. I couldn't keep pretending that we could fix this. After everything, I knew I had to let go. So I told her it was over. It wasn't easy. I still love her. I always will. But I had to take control of my life again. I needed to heal. And staying in a marriage that felt like it was already over wouldn't help me do that. Right now, I don't know exactly where I'll go from here. I need time to think, to figure out what I want. But I'm no longer willing to live in the shadow of betrayal. I'm ready to take the next steps, whatever they may be. It's going to be hard, but I'm choosing to move forward. Thanks again for all your support. It really means a lot.